Teslin didn't know that Alpha King had sensed her the moment she stepped into the crowd. She didn't know he'd spent 2 years searching for someone with her gift, burning through every false lead and dead end until hope became a wound that wouldn't close. And she definitely didn't know that hiding among 10,000 bodies would be the very thing that betrayed her. All she knew was that the Festival of Flames only came once a year, and she'd spent 6 months stitching the banners that now rippled above the capital's streets. She wanted to see them fly, just once. Just this one small pleasure before she disappeared back into the shadows where women like her survived. The morning sun blazed gold across Velmora's ancient stones. Teslin pressed deeper into the crowd, pulling her threadbare hood lower. Bodies jostled around her, merchants, farmers, children perched on their fathers' shoulders, all craning for a glimpse of the royal procession. The air smelled of roasted honey cakes and spiced wine and the sweet decay of autumn leaves crushed underfoot. She shouldn't be here. Every instinct screamed it. But the banners. Gods, the banners were beautiful. Crimson silk catching the light, the wolf sigil prowling across a fabric she'd woven with her own hands. No one would ever know. That was the point. Teslin made beautiful things and never claimed them, stitched glory for others while keeping her head down, and her gift buried so deep it might as well be dead. The gift her mother had died for. The drums began, deep, thunderous, rattling in her chest. The crowd surged forward. Teslin let herself be carried, anonymous, invisible, just another face in the sea of thousands. Then she felt it. A prickle at the base of her skull. The sensation of being watched, not casually, but with intent. Predatory focus locked onto her like an arrow nocked and drawn. Teslin's breath caught. She scanned the crowd but saw only strangers, all facing forward, all watching the parade route. No one was looking at her. And yet, the drums grew louder. The first riders appeared at the far end of the avenue, armor gleaming, wolves embroidered on their cloaks. Behind them, a figure on a midnight black stallion. Even from this distance, Teslin could see his eyes scanning the crowd. Searching. The Alpha King was not what the stories described. The tales spoke of a beast barely contained in human skin, a warrior who'd bathed in the blood of his enemies and wore their bones as trophies. They said he'd killed his first challenger at 14, claimed the throne at 22 after his parents were found poisoned in their own beds, and had spent the 2 years since hunting their murderer with a patience that terrified his court. Teslin had expected a monster. What she saw was a man carved from winter. Soren Blackveil sat his horse like he'd been born in the saddle, still, controlled, radiating quiet authority that made the cheering crowd instinctively lower their voices as he passed. His dark hair was pulled back from a face of sharp angles and shadows. His jaw could have been carved from granite, his mouth a firm line that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. But his eyes. Teslin couldn't look away from his eyes. Pale gray, almost silver in the morning light, they swept across the crowd with mechanical precision. Not waving, not acknowledging the adoration. Searching. Always searching. Like a wolf scenting prey it couldn't yet see. Those eyes passed over her section of the crowd, then stopped, came back, and locked directly onto hers. Teslin's heart slammed against her ribs. Impossible. She was buried in the crowd, hood raised, face shadowed. There was no way he could see her. No way he could pick her out among thousands. But he had. The Alpha King raised his hand. The drums stopped. The riders halted. The entire procession ground to a standstill, and 10,000 people fell into confused silence. You! Soren's voice carried with supernatural clarity, slicing through the air like a blade. In the gray hood, come forward. The crowd rippled. Heads turned. Teslin felt the weight of 1,000 stares crushing down on her as people shuffled away, creating a path, an accusation, a spotlight she couldn't escape. Run! Her instinct screamed, "Run now!" But her legs wouldn't move. Something held her frozen. Not fear, not exactly. Something deeper. A hook buried in her chest, pulling her toward him against every shred of common sense. Soren dismounted in one fluid motion, tossing his reins to a guard. The crowd parted before him like water around stone. He moved with a predator's grace, each step deliberate, unhurried, and absolutely certain. He stopped 3 feet from her. Up close, he was overwhelming, taller than she'd realized, broader. The silver in his eyes wasn't cold. It was molten, burning with an intensity that made her skin prickle with heat. "You've been hiding," he said quietly, low enough that only she could hear. It wasn't a question. "I don't know what you're talking about." His head tilted slightly. "You're lying." Teslin's blood turned to ice. She'd kept her voice steady, her face blank, given him nothing. And still he knew. "What are you?" Teslin whispered, her voice barely audible above her racing heart. Soren studied her with those molten silver eyes, and she had the unsettling sense of being seen. Not just looked at, but truly seen, down to the marrow of her bones. "The question," he said, "is what you are. And why have you been hiding from me?" "I haven't." "You have." His voice was soft but absolute. "For 2 years, I've sent trackers, seers, bloodhounds across every corner of this kingdom, looking for someone with a gift that sees through lies. A gift that runs in bloodlines, passed from mother to daughter." His eyes searched her face. "Your mother was Alesta of the Weaver's Quarter. She burned when you were 12 for the crime of exposing a lord's false testimony in open court." Teslin couldn't breathe. No one knew that name. She'd buried it, buried everything, become someone new in a city that didn't know her face. "You're wrong," she managed. "I'm not, and you know it." He stepped closer, and the crowd had backed so far away they might as well have been alone. "I know what you see when people lie, the shadows that crawl across their skin, the way truth glows bright and falsehood dims like a dying flame." Her hands were shaking. "Who told you?" "Your mother did. 15 years ago, before I had any use for such information." Something flickered across his face. Grief, maybe, or the ghost of it. "She came to my father seeking protection. He turned her away. He didn't believe her gift was real. And then she died for it." "Yes." Soren didn't flinch from the accusation in her voice. "A failure my family has never corrected. Until now." Teslin's jaw tightened. "So you stopped a royal parade, exposed me to 10,000 witnesses, to correct your father's mistake? I'll be hunted before sunset, burned before midnight. You've killed me by speaking to me. No one will touch you. You can't promise that." "I can." The steel in his voice made her pause. "Because anyone who tries will answer to me, and I am not my father." The conviction was absolute, but Teslin had learned long ago that powerful men made easy promises and rarely kept them. "What do you want from me?" Soren was quiet for a moment. Around them, the crowd murmured. Guards shifted nervously. The whole parade waited in suspended chaos. He seemed utterly unbothered by the spectacle. "My parents were poisoned 2 years ago, murdered in their sleep by someone in my inner circle. I've interrogated every suspect, followed every thread." Nothing. A muscle jumped in his cheek. "In 3 days, I sign a treaty that will unite the wolf packs for the first time in a century. My enemies know this. They're desperate to stop it. And I am certain, absolutely certain, that the person who killed my parents is still in my court, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again." "You want me to find them?" "I want you to see them. Sit at my side for the treaty negotiations. Watch my counsel speak. Tell me who dims when they claim loyalty, who glows when they promise alliance." His eyes held hers. 3 days. That's all I ask. And then you disappear with enough gold to build a new life wherever you choose. I'll even forge you papers with a new name. A fresh start no one can trace. 3 days. Gold. Freedom. A new identity. It was everything she'd spent 14 years dreaming about. And if I refuse, then you walk away now, and I never trouble you again. He stepped back, creating space. I won't force you, Teslin. That's not who I am. She flinched at the sound of her real name, her first name, the one she hadn't heard spoken aloud since her mother's screaming stopped. How do you know that name? Your mother told my father many things before he dismissed her. I've spent 2 years learning every one of them. He paused. She wanted you protected. She begged for it. And my father failed her. I won't. Teslin stared at this king who'd stopped a parade, exposed her gift, and spoken her mother's final wish into the morning air like a promise he intended to keep. Every instinct told her to run, but her mother's face, half-remembered and seared with flames, whispered something else. Maybe this one is different. 3 days, Teslin said slowly, and then I'm gone. No arguments. No chains. Soren inclined his head. You have my word. Behind them, the drums began again. But everything had already changed. The crowd parted as Soren led her through the festival streets. Teslin felt their stares like brands on her skin, curious, fearful, and hungry for gossip that would spread through Velmora before nightfall. The king stopped the parade for a woman in a gray hood. The king spoke to her like he knew her. The king is taking her to the palace. She would never be invisible again. You've made me a target, she said quietly as they walked. I've made you untouchable. There's a difference. Untouchable until you don't need me anymore. Soren glanced at her, something unreadable in his silver eyes. You think I'd discard you after 3 days? Throw you to whatever wolves come hunting? I think powerful men make promises they don't intend to keep. He stopped walking. The guards behind them halted in perfect synchronization, but Soren's attention was entirely on her. Then let me make one I cannot break. He drew a blade from his belt, not ornate, not ceremonial, just simple steel worn smooth from use. Before she could react, he sliced his palm open. Blood welled up, dark and rich. A blood oath, he said, binding under the old laws. If I break my word to you, if I fail to protect you, fail to release you when our task is complete, fail to give you the golden papers I promised, the oath will take my life. Teslin stared at the blood dripping from his hand. You'd risk death over a promise to a stranger? You're not a stranger. You're the woman I've been searching for. He held out the knife, hilt first. But you need to choose this. I won't bind you without consent. Her hand trembled as she took the blade. The steel was warm from his grip. This was madness. She didn't know this man, didn't trust him, had every reason to believe he'd use her and throw her away like everyone else. But he was bleeding for her, offering his life as collateral. And when she looked at him, really looked, with the sight her mother had died for, she saw no shadows crawling across his skin, only light. Brilliant, steady, unwavering light. He was telling the truth, every word. Teslin drew the blade across her palm. Pain flared sharp and clean. She pressed her bleeding hand to his. The moment their blood mingled, something split open inside her chest. Heat flooded through her veins, rushing from her hand to her heart to every nerve ending in her body. Her vision blurred. For one dizzying instant she felt him. Felt his exhaustion, his grief, his desperate hope, his iron-willed determination to find his parents' killer before more blood was spilled. And beneath all that, wrapped around it like roots around stone, she felt something else. Recognition, like her soul had been waiting for his and hadn't known it until this moment. Soren inhaled sharply. His hand tightened on hers, and she saw her own shock reflected in his eyes. He'd felt it too. Neither of them spoke. The festival noise faded to a distant roar. The whole world narrowed to the place where their palms pressed together, blood and magic and something far older weaving between them. Then Soren released her hand. "The oath is sealed," he said, his voice rougher than before. He pulled a cloth from his pocket, tore it in half, and offered her the first piece. Their fingers brushed during the exchange. That spark flared again, smaller but no less electric. Teslin wrapped her palm without looking at him. Her heart was racing, her thoughts scattered, her entire understanding of the world tilting sideways. What was that? She didn't ask. He didn't explain. And somehow, that silence was louder than any words could have been. The palace of Blackvale rose from the cliffs like a snarl of black stone and silver spires. Teslin had seen it from a distance her whole life, a shadow on the horizon, a reminder of power she could never touch. But riding through the gates, flanked by the king's personal guard, she felt the weight of it settle over her like a second skin. "You don't belong here." The courtyard was chaos in motion. Servants hauling luggage, warriors sparring near the eastern wall, nobles in silk finery casting curious glances at the hooded woman riding beside their king. Soren dismounted and extended his hand to help her down. She ignored it, swinging off the horse herself. Something flickered across his face. Amusement, maybe. Or approval. "Mira will show you to your chambers," he said, gesturing to a woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes. "Rest. Eat. The first council session begins at sundown." "Sundown? That's barely 4 hours." "The treaty signing is in 3 days. We don't have time to waste." He paused, his voice dropping. "Your room is in the east wing. My chambers are at the end of the same corridor. If you need anything at all, you come to me. Not the servants, not the guards. Me. Why? Because I don't know who in this palace I can trust." His expression hardened. "And until I do, you stay close." He strode away before she could respond, his guards falling into formation behind him. Mira approached with a warm smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "This way, my lady. Your things are already being prepared." "I don't have things." "You do now." The chambers were larger than the entire boarding house where Teslin had spent the last 3 years. Silk curtains framed windows overlooking the jagged coastline. A copper tub steamed in the corner, fragrant with lavender and something sweeter she couldn't name. The bed was piled with furs so thick she could have drowned in them, and draped across a chair were clothes. Real clothes. A deep blue dress that matched her eyes, soft leather boots, a cloak lined with silver wool. "His Majesty had them commissioned," Mira said. "Before the festival. He hoped you would accept." Teslin's throat tightened. "He was that certain I'd say yes?" "He was that certain he'd find you." Mira squeezed her arm gently. "Rest now. I'll return before sundown." Alone, Teslin sank into the copper tub and let the heat seep into her aching muscles. She thought about the blood oath still throbbing in her palm. She thought about the strange recognition that had crackled between them. She thought about her mother, who had begged for protection and received only silence. And she thought about Soren Blackvale, who had commissioned clothes for a woman he hadn't yet found, as if her acceptance was never in doubt. What have I walked into? The water cooled before she found an answer. The council chamber smelled of old wood and older secrets. Teslin stood in the shadows near Soren's chair, dressed in the blue gown that fit like it had been sewn for her alone. Her hood was down for the first time in years. She felt exposed, vulnerable, like a rabbit surrounded by wolves who hadn't yet decided if she was prey. 12 council members sat around the curved table. Lords and ladies in fine fabrics, their faces carefully neutral, their eyes tracking her with barely concealed suspicion. "This is Teslin," Soren said without preamble. "She will be observing our sessions until the treaty is signed. Treat her presence as you would treat mine." A man with iron-gray hair and a scar bisecting his left eyebrow leaned forward. And why, exactly, does a stranger deserve such an honor? Because I say so, Lord Corvain. Soren's tone allowed no argument. Shall we begin? Teslin watched. That was her purpose here. Not to speak, not to interfere, just to watch. To see what others couldn't. Lord Corvain spoke first, reporting on border defenses. As his words filled the chamber, Teslin let her gift unfurl. Light. Steady, strong light wrapped around every sentence. He was telling the truth. Unpleasant truths about underfunded outposts and overworked soldiers, but truth, nonetheless. She moved her gaze to the next speaker. Lady Henworth, elderly and sharp-eyed, discussing grain stores. Again, light. Frustration colored her tone, but no deception. One by one, Teslin assessed them. Lord Merrick, young and nervous, truthful. Lady Essek, cold and calculating, truthful. General Bryce, weathered and blunt, truthful. Her hope began to waver. Maybe the traitor wasn't here. Maybe they were hiding deeper in the palace, beyond her reach. Then Lord Vane spoke. He was handsome in a polished way. Golden hair, easy smile, the kind of charm that made people trust him without knowing why. He reported on diplomatic relations with the Eastern Pax, his voice smooth as honey. Our alliance with the Thornwood Wolves remains strong, Your Majesty. Alpha Kieran has expressed nothing but enthusiasm for the treaty. Shadows erupted across his skin. Teslin went still. They crawled like living things, dark tendrils wrapping around his throat, his hands, his lying mouth. She'd never seen deception this thick, this layered. It wasn't just one lie. It was lies stacked on lies, a foundation of falsehood so deep she couldn't see the bottom. Her eyes flicked to Soren. He was watching Vane with perfect neutrality, giving nothing away. But beneath the table, his hand had curled into a fist. He already suspects. The session continued. Vane spoke twice more. Both times, the shadows writhed. But he wasn't the only one. Lady Cressida, a woman with raven hair and a smile that never reached her eyes, dimmed when she praised Soren's leadership. Not as dramatically as Vane, but enough. And General Aldrich, who had been silent for most of the meeting, flickered with shadow when he mentioned the treaty's security arrangements. 3 of them. At least 3 liars in a room of 12. By the time the session ended, Teslin's head was pounding. Using her gift this intensely was like staring into the sun. She could only sustain it so long before it started to burn. Soren dismissed the council and waited until the doors closed before turning to her. Tell me. His voice was quiet, controlled, but she saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers flexed with suppressed urgency. Lord Vane, she said. Everything he said about the Thornwood Alliance was a lie, not just misleading, completely false, and layered. He's been lying for a long time. Soren's eyes darkened. Vane has been on this council since my father's time. He helped negotiate the Eastern border treaties. Then he's been betraying you since your father's time. Teslin hesitated. There are others. Lady Cressida dimmed when she praised you. General Aldrich shadowed when discussing security. 3 traitors in my inner circle. At least 3. I can't see what they're hiding, only that they are hiding something. Soren turned to the window, staring out at the darkening sky. His reflection was hard, unreadable. Vane pushed hardest for the treaty timeline, insisted we couldn't delay. His voice was soft, almost to himself. He wanted me in that signing chamber in 3 days. The question is why? An ambush? Possibly. Or something worse. He faced her again. Can you tell the difference between types of lies? Political maneuvering versus genuine threat? No. A lie is a lie to my gift. The shadows don't care about motivation. Then we need more information. He moved closer, and she felt that pull again. The bond from the blood oath humming between them like a plucked string. Tomorrow, I'll arrange private audiences with each of them. You'll observe. We'll see what truths we can shake loose. And if we can't shake loose enough in 3 days? Then I walk into a treaty signing not knowing who among my allies wants me dead. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the silver flecks in his gray eyes. Thank you, Teslin, for what you did tonight. I know it wasn't easy. You're paying me. That's not why you did it. She should have argued, should have maintained the fiction that this was purely transactional. But when she looked at him and saw only light, steady, and unwavering, the words died on her tongue. Get some rest, Soren said quietly. Tomorrow will be harder. He walked her to the east wing in silence. At her door, his hand brushed hers. Brief, accidental, electric. Neither of them acknowledged it. But Teslin lay awake for hours afterward, staring at the ceiling, feeling the ghost of his touch like a brand on her skin. What is happening to me? The second day's interrogations left Teslin hollow. She'd sat through 6 private audiences, watching Soren question his council members with surgical precision. Lord Vane had been smooth, charming, his lies so polished they almost gleamed. Lady Cressida had deflected with cold efficiency, her shadows deepening whenever Soren pressed too close to dangerous questions. General Aldrich had sweated through his tunic, his deception smaller but no less damning. By evening, Teslin's skull felt like it was splitting open. She found the tower by accident, a narrow spiral staircase hidden behind a tapestry, leading up to a small balcony overlooking the sea. The wind was sharp and cold, carrying salt and the promise of storms. She pressed her palms against the ancient stone and breathed. You found my hiding place. She turned. Soren stood in the doorway, his formal coat discarded, his sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked younger like this, more human, less like a king, and more like a man carrying weights no one else could see. I needed air, she said. The gift takes a toll. I know. He joined her at the railing, close enough that she felt his warmth against the wind's bite. I've been pushing you too hard. You've been desperate. There's a difference. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. Using my own words against me. They were good words. Silence settled between them, comfortable in a way that surprised her. Below, waves crashed against the cliffs in endless rhythm. My parents used to come here, Soren said quietly. My mother loved the view. My father loved my mother. They'd stand right where we're standing and watch the storms roll in. His mouth pressed into a thin line. I found them in their bed the morning after the spring equinox. They looked peaceful, like they were sleeping. But they were cold. So cold. Teslin's chest ached. I'm sorry. Everyone says that. But you? He turned to look at her. You actually mean it. I can tell. Because you can read minds? Because I can read you. His eyes searched her face. You've lost someone too. Someone who died because of what they could do. My mother. Tell me. She shouldn't. This wasn't part of their arrangement, but standing here, wrapped in darkness and sea spray, the words came anyway. I was 12. A lord had cheated a merchant out of his life savings, forged contracts, false witnesses, the whole weight of nobility against a common man. My mother couldn't stay silent. She stood up in the market square and told everyone exactly what she saw. The shadows crawling across the lord's skin. The lies dripping from his tongue. Teslin's voice hardened. They burned her 3 days later. Made me watch. Soren's hand found hers on the railing. She should have pulled away. Should have maintained the distance that had kept her alive for 14 years. Instead, she turned her palm up and let his fingers intertwine with hers. I've been searching for you for 2 years, he said, his voice rough, not just for your gift, for you, the woman who survived what you survived and still chose to help a stranger find justice. I chose gold and freedom. You could have found those other ways. Safer ways. His thumb traced circles on her wrist, and her pulse stuttered. You chose this. You chose to look at my counsel and see their lies. You chose to stand beside me even though every instinct told you to run. Maybe my instincts are broken. Or maybe they're finally right. He was so close. Close enough that she could see the silver shards in his gray eyes, the faint scar along his hairline, the way his breath caught when her gaze dropped to his mouth. "Soren," she whispered. A warning, a question, a surrender. "Tell me to stop?" His voice was strained. "Tell me this is just a transaction and I'll walk away. I'll honor our deal and never speak of this again." She should say exactly that. Instead, she rose on her toes and kissed him. Soren made a sound, something between relief and desperation, and his arms wrapped around her, pulling her against him. He kissed her like a man starving, like she was air and he'd been drowning, like every wall he'd built was crumbling and he didn't care. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, his forehead pressed to hers. "The bond?" he breathed. "During the blood oath. You felt it. Yes? Do you know what it means?" "I'm afraid to ask." "It means you're my mate. The one I've been waiting for my entire life without knowing it." His hands framed her face. "But I meant what I said. When our task is complete, you're free. The bond doesn't trap you. I won't trap you." Teslin's heart hammered. "Ask me again. After we find your parents' killer. After I've had time to think. And if you still want to leave?" The pain in his voice broke something open inside her. "Then you let me go," she whispered. "And I spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been." He kissed her forehead, soft and achingly tender. "I can wait. For you, I can wait forever." The assassin came on the third night. Teslin woke to a hand clamped over her mouth and a blade pressed against her throat. "Scream and you die," a voice hissed. Male, familiar. She couldn't place it in the darkness. Her heart slammed against her ribs. The steel was cold, steady, held by someone who knew exactly how much pressure would break skin. "Lord Vane sends his regards," the voice continued. "He wanted you to know it's nothing personal. You're simply inconvenient. Think. Her gift was useless here. She couldn't see shadows in pitch blackness. But she could feel the man's weight, sense where his balance was centered. She went limp. The assassin relaxed for a fraction of a second, adjusting his grip. Teslin drove her elbow backward into his ribs, twisted sideways, and screamed. The blade sliced her shoulder, fire and wet heat. But she was already rolling off the bed, crashing to the floor, scrambling toward the door. The assassin lunged. The door exploded inward. Soren moved like lightning made flesh, crossing the room in 2 strides, his hand closing around the assassin's throat before the man could raise his weapon. He lifted him off the ground with one arm, tendons straining, and eyes blazing silver in the moonlight. "Who sent you?" The words were barely human, a growl ripping from somewhere deep and primal. The assassin laughed, choking. "You're already dead, Wolf King. You just don't know it yet." His eyes rolled back. Foam bubbled at his lips. Soren dropped him, but it was too late. Poison. A false tooth, probably. The man was dead before he hit the ground. "Teslin." Soren was beside her in an instant, his hands finding her shoulders, her face, and her bleeding arm. "You're hurt. It's shallow." She was shaking, adrenaline and fear crashing through her in waves. "Soren, he said Vane sent him. But that's not possible." "Why?" "Because Vane left the palace this afternoon. I watched him go. And this man's voice." She pressed her hand to her temple. "I've heard it before, in the council chamber, giving security reports." Soren's face went pale. "Aldrich. Aldrich is dead on your floor, which means Vane isn't the mastermind." Her mind raced. He's the distraction. Someone wanted us focused on Vane while the real threat moved in the shadows. "Cressida. It has to be. She dimmed when praising you, but she never dimmed when discussing the treaty, because she wasn't lying about wanting it to happen. She was lying about why. Soren pulled her to her feet, his arm wrapping around her waist to steady her. The treaty signing is tomorrow. If Cressida is the true threat, then walking into that chamber means walking into a trap. Yes. His jaw set. But not walking in means losing the alliance. The Eastern Pax will see it as weakness. They'll fracture. Everything my parents built will collapse. Teslin gripped his shirt, forcing him to meet her eyes. Then we don't run. We expose her. Tomorrow, in front of everyone. She'll have contingencies. Guards loyal to her. Escape routes. Not if we cut them off first. Teslin's mind was crystallizing, fear burning away into something harder. You know this palace. You know which soldiers are truly loyal. We move tonight. Quietly. Position your people before dawn. And when Cressida makes her move, tomorrow. We're ready for her. Soren's expression shifted from fear to something fiercer. Pride, maybe. Wonder. You're not running. I told you. My instincts are broken. No. He kissed her. Hard, fast, desperate. They're perfect. You're perfect. I'm terrified. So am I. His hands cupped her face. But I trust you. With my life. With my kingdom. With everything. The words thundered through her like a storm. I trust you. No one had ever said that to her. Not once in 26 years of hiding. Then let's end this, she whispered. Together. Soren's smile was sharp as a blade. Together. The treaty hall blazed with candlelight. Teslin stood at Soren's right hand, dressed in silver and black, his colors, a message to everyone watching. She was no longer hiding, no longer afraid. Let them see me. Let them wonder. The Eastern Alphas had arrived at dawn. Alpha Kieran of Thornwood, a mountain of a man with kind eyes and a thunderous laugh. Alpha Seren of Mistfall, silver-haired and sharp-tongued. Alpha Draven of Iron Hollow, young and hungry and watching everything. And across the table, positioned among Soren's counselors, sat Lady Cressida. She looked beautiful, composed, not a single shadow visible on her skin, because she wasn't speaking. Wasn't lying, just waiting. For what? Teslin scanned the room. Soren's loyal guards stood at every door, positioned exactly where they'd planned. But Cressida had her own people scattered through the crowd. Teslin had identified 3 by the way they kept glancing toward their mistress. The ceremony began. Formal words. Ancient vows. Soren's voice rang clear and strong, promising alliance, promising peace. Cressida rose to speak. Before we seal this historic moment, she said, her smile serene, I must address a concern that weighs on us all. Here it comes. Our beloved king has recently taken counsel from an outsider. A woman with unnatural abilities. A woman whose mother was burned for witchcraft. Cressida's eyes found Teslin's. How can we trust a treaty built on the whispers of a witch? Murmurs rippled through the hall. Soren didn't flinch. Teslin is under my protection. Her counsel is her own business. Is it? Cressida produced a scroll. I have testimony here from 3 witnesses who saw this woman's mother curse a lord, who watched her predict deaths that conveniently came to pass. The gift runs in bloodlines, Your Majesty. How do we know she hasn't cursed you? Manipulated your judgment? Bent you to her will? The Eastern Alphas exchanged glances. Doubt flickered across Alpha Kieran's face. Teslin's heart pounded. This was the play. Discredit her. Isolate Soren. Turn his allies against him. But Cressida had miscalculated. You're right, Teslin said, stepping forward. The gift does run in bloodlines, and my gift shows me truth. The hall went silent. Every word someone speaks I see as light or shadow. Truth glows. Lies crawl. She turned to face Cressida directly. Would you like to tell them what I see when you speak? Lady Cressida? Cressida's composure faltered. Just a flicker, but enough. This is absurd. Tell them about General Aldrich, the man you sent to kill me last night. Teslin's voice carried through the hall. Tell them about Lord Vane, your decoy, designed to distract the king while you positioned your pieces. Tell them... She paused, letting the moment stretch. About the poison you used to kill the previous king and queen. Chaos erupted. Cressida's hand flew to her belt, a concealed dagger, but Soren was faster. He vaulted the table, moving with inhuman speed, and had her arm twisted behind her back before the blade cleared its sheath. Guards loyal to Cressida! Soren's voice rang out. Stand down now, or share her fate. 3 men drew weapons. They were dead before they hit the ground, Soren's loyal soldiers cutting them down with brutal efficiency. Cressida laughed, high and wild. You think this ends with me? The roots go deeper than you know, little king. Your father discovered the conspiracy. That's why he had to die. And you? Her eyes blazed with hatred. You should have died with them. But I didn't. Soren's voice was ice. And now I know exactly who to hunt. He looked at Alpha Kieran. This woman murdered my parents, plotted to murder me, and tried to kill the woman under my protection. Will Thornwood still stand with Blackveil? Kieran's expression hardened. Thornwood stands with justice. This snake answers for her crimes. One by one, the Eastern Alphas nodded. The treaty held. Cressida was dragged away screaming, her perfect composure shattered, her careful plans turned to ash. And Teslin stood in the center of the hall, breathing hard, her secret laid bare before every powerful wolf in the region. Soren crossed to her. In front of everyone, the alphas, the nobles, the guards, he took her hand and raised it to his lips. This woman saved my kingdom, he said, loud enough for all to hear. She will always have my protection and my gratitude. But his eyes said something different. Stay. Please stay. The hall erupted in cheers. Teslin's heart soared. The aftermath was chaos wrapped in triumph. Interrogations. Confessions. A web of conspiracy unraveled thread by thread. Cressida had planted loyalists throughout the palace, the military, even the merchant guilds. Rooting them out took 3 days of sleepless nights. Teslin worked beside Soren through all of it, reading witnesses, confirming truths, exposing the last hidden snakes. Her gift had never been used so openly, so freely. And for the first time in her life, no one tried to burn her for it. They feared her, some of them. She could see it in their eyes, but they respected her more. On the 4th morning, Soren found her in the tower, their tower, now. It's done, he said quietly. Cressida will stand a trial before the United Pax. The conspiracy is broken. Teslin nodded, exhaustion pulling at her bones. The 3 days passed long ago. Your oath should have killed you. The magic recognized your choice. His voice was quiet. When you stayed to fight instead of fleeing, the terms shifted. The oath binds intent, not just words. Convenient. True. He held her gaze. But the deal is complete now. You're free. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unspoken. I have your gold, he continued, his voice carefully neutral. And papers with a new name. Mira is preparing a horse. You can leave within the hour. Teslin should have felt relieved. This was what she wanted. Freedom. Anonymity. A fresh start far from danger. Instead, she felt hollow. Is that what you want? She asked. For me to leave? What I want doesn't matter. I made you a promise. That's not an answer. Soren's restraint shattered. He closed the distance between them, his hands finding her waist, his forehead dropping to hers. I want you to stay, he breathed. Every part of me is screaming to beg you to stay, but I won't. I won't trap you with guilt or obligation or the bond that's been burning between us since the moment our blood touched. What if I want to be trapped? He stopped breathing. Teslin, I spent 14 years hiding, surviving, telling myself that invisible was the same as safe. She pulled back to meet his eyes. But then you stopped a parade for me. You bled for me. You let me see your grief and your fear and your hope. And somewhere between the council chamber and this tower, I stopped wanting to disappear. What do you want now? I want to see where this goes. Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. I want to wake up tomorrow and still be here. I want to learn what it means to be your mate. Not because the bond demands it, but because I choose it. Hope blazed across Soren's face, raw, unguarded, and achingly vulnerable. That's not a yes. It's not a no either. She smiled, the first real smile she'd allowed herself in years. Court me properly, Wolf King. Prove you're worth staying for. Soren laughed, a genuine sound, bright and startled and full of joy. I can work with that. He kissed her softly, reverently, like she was something precious he'd waited his whole life to hold. And Teslin kissed him back, finally letting herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved this. 3 months passed like water through open fingers. Cressida's trial concluded in the second week. The evidence overwhelming, the verdict unanimous. She hanged at dawn, her conspiracy dying with her last breath. Teslin didn't attend. She spent that morning in the tower instead, watching the sun rise over the sea, thinking about justice and mercy and the complicated space between them. Soren found her there, as he always did. It's done, he said. I know. He joined her at the railing, shoulder to shoulder, the bond between them humming with quiet contentment. 3 months of courtship. 3 months of slow mornings and heated debates and laughter echoing through ancient halls. He'd taken her riding along the cliffs, shown her the hidden waterfalls beyond the forest, introduced her to his people as his honored guest. Never pushing, never demanding, always letting her set the pace. And she'd fallen. Completely. Irrevocably. Without a single shadow of doubt. Mira cornered me yesterday, Teslin said, breaking the comfortable silence. Should I be worried? She told me you've been impossible lately, distracted, smiling at inappropriate moments during council meetings. Soren's ears reddened. I have no idea what she's talking about. She also said you've been driving the jeweler mad with revisions, something about a ring that has to be perfect. The flush spread to his cheeks. Mira talks too much. Teslin turned to face him, her heart pounding. Were you ever going to ask? Or were you going to revise that ring into oblivion? I was waiting for the right moment. And when would that be? When I was certain you wouldn't run. His voice dropped. When I knew you wanted this as much as I do. Teslin reached up and cradled his face in her hands, this fierce, patient, devastating man who had waited 3 months for her to be ready. I love you, she said. The words had never felt right before, had always caught in her throat like thorns. But now they flowed like water, like breath, like something she'd been holding back her entire life. Soren's eyes glistened. Say it again. I love you, Soren Blackveil. I love your impossible patience and your terrible jokes, and the way you pretend to be invincible when you're actually terrified of losing the people you care about. She smiled through her own tears. I love you, and I'm done running. I want to stay. Not for 3 days, not for 3 months, for always. He kissed her. Deep and desperate and overflowing with everything he'd been holding back. All the longing, all the hope, all the love he'd kept carefully contained for fear of scaring her away. When they finally broke apart, he dropped to one knee. I had a speech prepared, he said, his voice rough, something about destiny and bonds and the way your gift sees truth in everything but yourself. But I think the only words that matter are these. He pulled out a ring, simple silver, set with a stone the exact color of his eyes. Marry me, Teslin. Be my queen. Let me spend the rest of my life proving I was worth the risk. Yes. She didn't hesitate. Yes to all of it. From somewhere in the stairwell, Mira's voice drifted up. Finally. They both laughed, and Soren slid the ring onto her finger, and the world felt exactly right for the first time in Teslin's 26 years. The bonding ceremony took place beneath the full moon. They held it in the courtyard, not the formal hall. Teslin's request, granted without question. She wanted sky above her, open air, the freedom she'd finally learned to claim. The Eastern Alphas attended. Kieran's laugh echoed off the walls. Seren nodded with grudging approval. Draven watched with envy that bordered on admiration. Mira wept through the entire ceremony. Teslin wore silver, a gown that caught the moonlight and scattered it like stars. Soren wore black, the wolf sigil embroidered over his heart in thread she'd stitched herself. Her hands, her work, finally claimed. The vows were ancient, but they'd written their own additions. I choose you, Soren said, his voice carrying through the silent courtyard. Not because the bond demands it, not because duty requires it, but because you are the bravest, most stubborn, most extraordinary person I've ever known. And I would choose you again in every lifetime. Teslin's throat tightened. I spent my whole life hiding, surviving, believing I didn't deserve to be seen. She looked at him, her king, her mate, her home. You stopped a parade to find me. You bled to prove you could be trusted. You waited while I learned to stop running. Her voice broke. I choose you, Soren. Every day, every moment, for the rest of our lives. The bond snapped fully into place. Not a chain, but a bridge. Connection without captivity. Partnership without possession. The crowd erupted. Later, much later, they lay tangled in moonlight and silk. Tell me something, Soren murmured against her hair. Something I don't know. Teslin smiled. The morning of the festival, I almost didn't go. Told myself it was too dangerous. That I should stay hidden like always. What changed your mind? The banners. I'd spent 6 months stitching them. I wanted to see them fly. Just once. She traced the scar on his palm, the blood oath that had started everything. I thought I was invisible in that crowd. Just another face among thousands. You were the only face I saw. I know. She pressed a kiss to his chest. You stopped a parade for me. I'd stop the world for you. You already did. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, the bond humming between them, the future stretching bright and unafraid. Teslin had tried to blend into the crowd, certain that invisible was the same as safe. She'd been wrong, and she'd never been more grateful for anything in her life. Where are you listening from? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people find these tales.